with that kind of inspiration. Now that story was written in a diary published by Random House in 1984, because that's it. The diary's in that. May I see that?
Here's the page.
Is that the page?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. This is the page. Okay, October 20th. May I read you a little bit of this? 4:30 a.m., tired, very tired, feeling the many months of struggle. Last night I went up to the den to make some notes, was looking for a pencil, rummaging through some papers in the back of my desk drawer where things accumulate for years when I turned up one of Papa's old business cards. Andrea Cuomo, Italian-American Groceries, fine imported products. I couldn't help wondering what Papa would have said if I had told him I was tired or, God forbid, that I was discouraged. Then I thought for a few minutes about how he dealt with hard circumstances. 1,000 different pictures flashed through my mind. He was so used to dealing with hard circumstances. Almost everything was hard for Mama and Papa. But one scene in particular came sharply into view. Just moved into Holliswood. Our house sat above this, etc. Maybe he was 5'6" if his heels weren't worn. Maybe he weighed 150 pounds if he had a good meal. Maybe he could see a block away if his glasses were clean. But he was stronger than Frankie and I and Marie and Mama all together. We stood in the street looking down at the tree. The rain was falling. We waited a couple of minutes figuring things out, and then he announced, "Okay, we're going to push him up." 2 years ago, a publisher called me from Michigan and said, we have this lovely story that we think would make a great children's book. I said, "What story?" He said, "From a diary." "What is the story?" "The Blue Spruce." I said, "Oh yes, I did it for public radio." They said, "Yeah, that's where we heard it. You made a cassette for public radio, and they used it for fundraising purposes, and somebody heard it in Michigan and brought it in." We said, "What a lovely story. We read the book. We want to make it a children's book." I said, "Great, I'll do it." And I told Matilda, I said, "They want to make it. If we can sell the thing, I'll give you the money." Frankly, I didn't think it would make any money, so I said, "What's the big deal?" But Matilda says, "Great." So they said, "Okay, now we'll send you somebody to write it." I said, "Send somebody to write it for me? Forget about it. I write all my own stuff. I write my own speeches," the arrogance of somebody who doesn't understand. And they said, "No, Governor, you don't understand." I said, "Sure, I'll write for a 25-year-old, and then I'll press it down, make the words small." And they humored me, and they said, "Sure, go ahead." And that's what I did. I wrote, I forget, 800 words or something, and I made it nice and short, and I sent it to them, and they said, "This is no good. Governor, it's great for adults, but it's no good for children." And they explained to me the psychology involved. For example, I had Frankie in the story. I did the story exactly as I just read it to you, with all those pieces. It said, "No, it can only be one child, because the child will relate to the child in the book. And if you have two, it'll confuse the children, and so it has to be one child. And you have to make yourself a little younger than you actually were." I said, "What do you mean younger? This is a true story." He said, "It was a beautiful story." They said, "It is a beautiful story. And we will keep the heart of the matter. We will keep the important lesson. We will keep the idea of the dream. But you have to do it in a way that will appeal to children." And I said, "Okay." And I made all those compromises, and they sent me a beautiful woman by the name of Kathy Jo Wargan, who understands the psychology and who patiently, taught me it as I wrote and rewrote this stuff over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then finally, they got copy they liked and found this genius of an artist, Gijsbert van Frankenhuyzen, who did these marvelous pictures. I mean, the paintings are really beautiful, and they're impressionistic and abstract, and then I was given to a kind of relentless objectivity and a cold reality, and I wanted them to look exactly like Papa and exactly like Mama. And then he said, "Yeah, if we do that, then the kid has to look exactly like you." I said, "Well, forget about it." So they got a model. Somebody was much better than I was, better looking. And he's a kid in a school in Michigan, an orphanage actually. And I wrote him a beautiful letter saying, "Hey, look, if I were as good looking as you, I'd run for president when I grew up." And that's the story in the Blue Spruce. And then I wrote it, and it was an immediate hit. I must tell you, I hate to say this with Len Riggio's Barnes & Noble as the context, but it sold on Amazon in about 11 days before Hanukkah and Christmas last year. It sold something like 10,000 copies, which is amazing. There was no advertising. We had no money for advertising, and they didn't spend any money for advertising. And the irony of ironies, and I'll finish with this, the irony of ironies is that while I wrote it for children, obviously, and the whole point of it is what Papa's line was, and that is, and he said it to us over and over in 1,000 different ways, always in his Salernitana dialect, never in English. But what he said over and over is, hey, look, everybody has to have a dream. Everybody has to have something to believe in, or there's nothing to live for. You have to, whatever it is, you live for your children, you live to get rich, you live to be center fielder of the New York Yankees, you live to marry that one person who means more than anything else in life to you, whatever it is. But when you stop dreaming, you stop living. If you're so old and so dried up that there's nothing you look forward to the next day, no grandchild, no walk in the woods, no good television show, no theater. If you have nothing to aspire to, there is no life. So get yourself a dream and then fight for it if it's something that's, you have to achieve. And don't worry about losing. Number one, if you fight hard enough, the chances are that most of the time you'll get your dream. And if you don't, so what? Because the game is lost only when you stop trying. You can't assure yourself victory. You can't assure yourself the love of the people around you. You can't assure yourself success in this world. The only thing you can guarantee is you can make your full effort to achieve the good things. That's all you have control over, is the effort. And so that's the way God will judge you. He's not going to judge you by what you achieve, and how much could you achieve? There have been billions of people on the planet. We're only 1 million years old as human beings. The world is billions and billions of years older than we are. We're nothing. We're specks in existence. How much could you achieve if you were the mightiest man on earth? If you did more than any other human being ever did, what would you do compared to the universe and its size? So that can't be the test. The test can't be how much you achieve. God will give you credit for whatever you achieve, but He's going to judge you by your effort. That was Papa. Papa never went to school. Papa never heard a philosopher. He never went to church either, God for, He was Italian, he would take my mother, he would drop her off, he would come back, hey, have a cigarette, he'd have a cup of coffee, he'd go back to the church, he'd pick her up. Pa, why don't you go, Pa, you take Mama all the way to St. Monica's, why don't you go and she'll say a prayer for me, don't worry. So. And that's what the book tries to say. And so the first people who read it were the lawyers in my office. Because, somebody had put in the Daily News, I think, that Governor Cuomo has a children's book. And I said, oh, wonderful, now you're writing children's book? I told them a story about it. And I said, here, take it home, read it to your kids. I told this partner and that partner, and Bill Rooney, who's the antitrust partner, and boy, they all came back and they all said the same thing. Read the book to the kids last night. Kids liked it. I loved it. I said, really? No, at first I was taken by it. Really? He says, oh, yeah. And why not? I should have figured it out myself. And now when somebody asks me about it, some adult asks me about it, I say, you should read it, and read it for yourself. Pictures are beautiful. Language is easier than you'd normally run into in your reading. And it's as applicable to you as it is to anybody, because the message is you're never too old to dream.